Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu joins us now. She's a lawyer and a political activist. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. What do you think of these daily news conferences that every country around the world seems to be holding? Here in the UK, like in many countries, it's led mainly by politicians. There's a scientist, a scientific advisor on the side. Would you like to see more science presented to the people?
Hi, hello. I think it's very good that Boris Johnson is back. We need to have everybody at the table to make these decisions. In terms of the daily briefings, if I'm perfectly honest, what I've seen personally thus far is that it's not necessarily inspiring confidence in people as to how the pandemic is being managed by the government. Yes, we would love to see other experts. We would like to see questions that truly challenge and scrutinize the decisions being made by the government, because thus far, people are clearly, maybe not all people, but definitely a lot of people are questioning the science they are following. This does not put science in itself in disrepute, but it's the science of herd immunity, the science that has caused the government to dither and delay on a number of decision making, which includes lockdown and self-isolation. And it's the fact that there have been so many car crash interviews with government ministers in the last month or so that makes people wonder what is going on here. So yes, we should have experts. We should have balanced opinion. People, the public, should be treated as adults and given true transparency on the decision making, true transparency on the issues. The fact that the government has not been able to handle the PPE shortages. Why is it that the government wasn't engaging British manufacturers to produce the necessary PPE, as we're finding? All of this has raised questions of confidence. And the fact that Boris Johnson is back now, he's talking about there being an apparent success. What success? As you rightly said, the figures are far more than that which has been claimed by the government. The government said maybe about 20-odd thousand, and these 20-odd thousand are those who have been hospitalized. But according to an FT report, we could potentially be looking at 40,000 plus deaths in the United Kingdom alone, which we know that lack of PPE, especially for those on the front line, would have played a significant part in leading to their deaths.
Yeah, it's interesting that Boris Johnson said in that speech that I want to share all our working and our thinking, my thinking, with you, the British people, and of course we'll be relying as ever on the science to inform us. We've had a story over the past few days that Boris Johnson's political advisor, Dominic Cummings, who has a BA in history, has been sitting in on meetings of the scientific body that informs the government's decisions. And also, you mentioned the lack of PPE, the personal protective equipment. Boris Johnson didn't apologise for that lack of PPE, and he didn't mention the number of deaths in the NHS, which the government puts at 49. Other sources say at least 120 and probably more. A bit more honesty and humility, maybe, from Boris Johnson. Could that help?
I think that would most definitely help, but you know what? Don't hold your breath, because I'm not going to hold my breath. This is why I say, look, it's good that he's back in the office, because it is time to hold him accountable for all the decisions that have been made, which I understand. Of course, the buck stops with him as prime minister. And the fact that there has been no real transparency. And there are people asking real questions, hard questions that must be answered. You're talking about the sage and Dominic Cummings being in there. And I think it's right to question why he's there and what influence, if any, he's had on there. But also the fact that, as I understand it, there's no single person from the Black, Asian, or ethnic minority groups in that sage committee room forum, which is equally as shocking. So when we talk about this government being transparent, this government putting at its center all of its people, and particularly the Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups who have, as you can see, have a higher rate of death from COVID-19, it makes you question what the intention of this government is. So it is time to hold Boris Johnson and the entire government to account. Yes, we need the government to act, and act in a way that supports and helps the country, not in a way that dithers and delays, not in a way that they can claim they're following their science, because when you look at other countries which acted quicker than the United Kingdom. It tells you that whatever science the UK has been following, now that we know that we are potentially the second worst hit globally, that so-called science has not been right. So yes, it is time for accountability. It's time for the government to step up. It's time for the government to definitely be humble about the mistakes it's made, lessons learned, and apologize for it. But even more importantly than apologizing, I need the government to provide the PPE, to save lives, to provide for those who are on the front line, to ensure that if they are going to be easing on the lockdown, so I was happy to see that Boris Johnson was not talking about easing lockdown right now because it's not the right time. But whichever point of time we're going to be easing on the lockdown, it's so important that there's an obligation on employers or schools, wherever it is that people are going to be in, that there's protective gear for people to wear. So yes, people should wear masks, definitely. But in any other capacity, before you throw people out there and say, yes, get out there into the world, let's ensure that measures are in place that will protect people further as we try to rebuild our economy.
Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu, thank you so much indeed for your time.